This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
This House believes that the recent executive appointments were to satisfy the President's political interests and not the interests of the citizens. Samuel Timaka, Team Negative. Does the rule of democracy lie in the hands of the citizens?
I beg your pardon?
Does the rule of democracy lie in the hands of the citizens?
It is the executive to implement
Thank you.
it.
How many members were dropped from the cabinet?
I beg your pardon?
How many members were dropped from the cabinet?
6.
Thank you. Who votes the President of Uganda?
The citizens.
Thank you. So you believe that the President is meant to fulfill the interests of the citizens?
Not necessarily through
Thank
the
you.
recent
What is
executive
the role
appointments.
of the President of the country?
I beg your pardon?
What is the role of the President of the country? Uganda.
To head the executive.
Thank you. Would you be loyal to someone that has annoyed you greatly before or no?
I would if he has something against me.
Thank you. You would.
If he has something against
Thank
me.
you. Name the one person that satisfies the President's political interests and has remained in power.
I beg your pardon?
Name one person who has satisfied the President's political interests and has remained in power.
Salim Saleh, Irene
Thank you.
Moloni.
Give me statistics on the people that have been found guilty and retained in power.
Irene Moloni squandered
Give me
24
statistics.
billion Ugandan shillings in the construction of
Give me
Karuma in
statistics
Simba
on the
Dam,
people.
and she is currently the senior presidential advisor.
What are the President's political interests?
I beg your pardon?
What are the President's political interests?
To prolong his regime.
Thank you. When was Salim Saleh found guilty?
I beg your pardon?
When was Salim Saleh found guilty?
He was never prosecuted.
Thank you. Is there any written proof that he was found guilty?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're discussing a case that was solved from first speech. I came here and asked them, does the role of democracy lie in the hands of the citizens? Now, ladies and gentlemen, if the rule of democracy lies in the hands of the citizens, which means whatever the president is supposed to do is supposed to be held by the citizens. By the mere fact that this is a democratic country, as Team Negative, we came and said, which means whatever is happening in the country is dictated by the citizens. By the first step of voting the president, the members of the country, who are the citizens, dictate what is going to happen in the country. I asked of how many ministers were dropped, not reshuffled. Ladies and gentlemen, only 2 ministers were dropped from the cabinet places because they're undergoing trial on corruption cases. Now they came here and told us that there were 6 ministers that are dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very clear. The team affirmative don't have information. I came on and asked that by the mere fact that the president drops people who have been merely suspected for corruption, which means he's trying to satisfy the citizens' interests and not the interests of the president, because the president himself is voted by the citizens and he is meant to serve the citizens. I came here and asked, what is the role of the president? Now, ladies and gentlemen, the role of the president is to serve the citizens because he is elected by the citizens. And now, Team Affirmative came here and told us that the president is supposed to rule his regime, which regime is made of citizens that is going to help to satisfy their needs. Now, which he's doing right now with the shuffles that we're making. So we're actually debating something that Team Affirmative came and closed because they came and told us we are right that the president is actually satisfying the needs of the people who are the citizens. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on. I told them, I came on and asked when General Salim Saleh was found guilty. But ladies and gentlemen, there is no statistical data as to when General Salim Saleh was found guilty. And considering the fact that Uganda is a democratic country, whatever is not written and published to the country and said that this particular person is found guilty, we are not counting that because we're not moving on fallacies and imaginations. We're moving by statistics and those things that are happening in the country, which we're all observing. Now, Team Affirmative came here and told us he was found guilty and he is still guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, is there any place that General Salim Saleh has been announced guilty or not? I came here and asked them and they failed to answer it and said, he is still guilty. We move on, ladies and gentlemen. I came on and asked, name one person who has satisfied the president's political interests and remained in power. They told me General Salim Saleh, but he was not prosecuted. Now, by the mere fact that he was not prosecuted, which means he has no crime to answer, because you cannot be prosecuted when you're innocent and in prison. Ladies and gentlemen, the president came and the president sent 2 ministers to jail because they were suspected of the Mabati saga. And now, how do we hide this from the public? I beg to raise my case.
Are you calling the president utterly selfless? Is that your stand?
Pardon?
Are you calling the president utterly selfless,
No,
inherently rational?
The president is voted by the citizens.
Thank
He is meant to serve the citizens.
Did you analyze this resolution?
Yes, we did.
Wa-to, the helping verb, wa. In which tense are we?
Pardon?
Wa-to satisfy, wa. The helping verb, wa. Which tense are we?
We're in the past.
Thank you. Using one appointment, would we be able to tell a pattern?
Pardon?
Using one appointment, which was last week, would we be able to tell a pattern?
Make it clear.
Thank you. Do you believe that all the assumptions that you have made and these newly appointed ministers are factually untrue and are based on baseless predictions?
But we factually proved them.
Are you aware that service has not yet been achieved with these current ministers?
And that is why the president is shuffling.
What proof is there that these ministers are going to be competent?
We came here and explained how they are valid for the jobs that they have been
Does
given.
age come with wisdom?
Yes, it does.
Is Mary Chitutu undergoing prosecution?
Pardon?
Is Mary Chitutu undergoing prosecution?
She's undergoing court hearing, not prosecution.
Do you admit to a fallacy of generalization?
Pardon?
Do you admit to a fallacy of generalization, or you do not know what that means?
I do not admit to that.
You. Is corruption a qualification for an executive appointment?
Pardon?
Is corruption a qualification for an executive appointment?
I believe that when you're found corrupt, you're not eligible for a particular office.
What is your case today?
We're here to prove that the recent executive appointments were to
Do you
satisfy-
agree with the resolution today?
Yes, we do.
Was Miriam Matembe a minister of defense?
Pardon?
Was Miriam Matembe a minister of defense, or you do not
We're
know
speaking
her?
of the recent executive appointments.
Fine, but you said in the early 2000s all appointments were made to fight rebels. Didn't your third speaker say
Because the
that?
affirmative case came and brought that up.
Time. I asked them, are you calling the president utterly selfless? Is he inherently rational by coming up here and claiming that the president only makes executive appointments based on the citizens' interest? They are calling him inherently rational. He makes decisions only for the people. He has sacrificed himself as a scapegoat, which is clearly untrue. The people whom he appoints are clearly beneficial to him in all aspects. He continues to maintain Irene Muloni as a presidential advisor, first of all, to maintain his loyalty to him, and second of all, because she has evidence against him. I asked them if they analyzed this resolution. Clearly, they did not. Because they came up here and they told us that recent is only last week. If we are to use last week, that means we cannot notice a pattern. Because to notice a pattern, if we considered last week, we'd be unable to tell a trend without basing on baseless predictions. Because the ministers that were nominated last week, that were appointed last week, have not yet worked. What does that mean to us? The resolution were to satisfy, were in the past, means that we must have a trend that we can follow. We must have tangible outcomes that we have witnessed the executive appointments perform. They came here and claimed that Miriam Matembe was an executive appointment made in the early 2000s to fight rebels. But Miriam Matembe was the Minister of Ethics and Integrity. I do not see how this coordinates. Miriam Matembe has never been involved in any corruption scandal. She founded Action for Development, Uganda's leading advocacy organization for women's rights. She fought pornography. She fought corruption in Uganda, but still she was taken down. I asked them, is Mary Chitutu undergoing prosecution? No, she is not. All her crimes have been dusted under the rugs. She's coming up here as a senior presidential advisor. First of all, that is a fallacy of generalization. Just because Mary Chitutu is undergoing prosecution does not mean that all the rest are. They're asking us to zone in on her because they are scared. They are scared of us talking about Agnes Nandutu. They are scared of us talking about Salim Saleh. Thank you.
First of all, I will humbly move the audience to applaud both sides of today's debate. In about 7 years of participating in high school Crossfire, this has been my top six of debates I've been part of. The resolution said the recent executive appointments were to satisfy the president's political interests. Team Affirmative comes up with a very beautiful strategy. Number one, a strategy that seeks to create a trend in observance of political interests of the president. They ask you, again in their cross-examination speech, that can you establish a trend of one executive appointment? To which the answer is rightfully no. And because of that, Team Affirmative, Team Negative is then strong-armed into accepting information from as far back as 2000. Now you fight it, but the third speaker comes on stage and still concedes and even engages in those appointments from 2000. Now, part of engagement in those appointments is in 2000, there were military conflicts, so they are army generals. that are being appointed. At every point in time, you're saying right now it's service delivery. So that is why Balam has been voted, and Muhoozi for service delivery, and Balam for citizen participation or youth participation. But going back to Affirmative One, who to me today was the best speaker. She speaks of, number one, the first thing was a characterization of the president's political interests. Socio-economic interests vis-a-vis political interests. Now, because of political interests of the president, such as keeping himself in power, they told you that army generals will be given positions because they are feared by the president. Therein is my first shortcoming. That information is purely hearsay. You would have come and asked them that are they courts of law that say Museveni is guilty of war crimes, which is one of the most it's a very damning allegation. I hear nothing of that. Because of the ability of Team Affirmative to establish a trend that then is used to purposefully inform whether there is a legitimate political interest and whether it has been championed. They have gone on to even establish a trend that the appointments always happen 2 to 3 years. Can you imagine? Not once, 2006, twice, 2011, thrice, 2016, 4 times, 2021, 5 times, 2026. I felt that your inability to engage them on that trend of political appointments, perhaps through arguments such as every half of a term, the president wants to refresh his cabinet. Perhaps after half a term, someone's usefulness has been used. They even tell you that merely sacking someone is not called accountability. Merely sacking someone only calls for the president wanting to satisfy an interest, getting them out, but they are never prosecuted.
For me, this was a wonderful debate as well. You both put up a good fight against each other, and you both challenged each other. However, for me, the person who was able to convince me, like I said in the previous judgments, of their ideology, basing on the fact that this is a value debate, is the one who took that day. The mere fact that as Team Affirmative, they had the burden of defining the key terms, and they define recent like that. And in your rebuttal, you come up and you define recent in a different way. And your third speaker comes up and starts mentioning things that are part of their recent, which is early 2000s. That shows contradictions, which I wouldn't have faulted you for. However, their fourth speaker comes up and points it out. Your entire discussion of the 2000 appointments entirely contradicts. You're saying that recent is just the recent appointments of last week. Moving on. You had the burden of proving to us your case of service delivery and involvement of the youth, which they come up and rebut by mentioning to you that, you know what, all these are not guaranteed, basing on also the wording of the resolution. And they show an entire trend in their entire team case, which you fail up to show us. I commend, which you fail to show us.
Yeah, to start with, I'll start with Team Affirmative. Never come and preempt or presume what Team Negative will say. This thing of where people come and say, I know the negative side will come here. Never. Why? You may be saying that they will come here and say A, B, C, D, yet they don't have it on record. Literally, you might be giving them something that they are to say when they come up here. And on a bad day, if you get a very good negative, you might be giving them an argument that they will come, counterfeit, build on, and you fail to respond to the same. So, never do that again. To Team Negative, and to all of us here, let's learn today there is what we call the even if argument. For example, in today's resolution, even where there is a clash on the definition or interpretation of the word recent, yes, it is not fatal for you to have your recent that at least you are able to give. But now, since you have the burden of refutal, it does not mean that you don't come and rebut or refute to what they have interpreted by recent to mean the early 2000s. Meaning, you can come up and say, yes, we are taking recent to mean maybe 21st March 2024. But even if we are to mean recent, or even if we are to interpret recent to mean the early 2000 in today's resolution or in today's debate, it still doesn't stand because of ABCD. Now, personally, why I will not disagree with what Mother Judge said. Why I will give them affirmative is this. For them, they were able to draw the recent to mean the early 2000. And they even able to refute what people are saying, the recent appointments. For example, they gave you an example of Honorable Balaam. They said, yes, he gave him because he has interacted with the youths. Which very youths, these very many numbers of the youths are the very people that are still going to come and vote for the president. So for me, this is what I do. In a resolution like this today, where every team has been able to prove its case, where every team has been able to give a better strategy, a better content, better style, good speaker points and all that, what do I look out for? I look out for the technicality. Technicality, I mean just a small thing that one team omitted to do that served as the advantage of the other team. And that is why I give it to them. But I want to appreciate you. All teams, both team affirmative and team negative. Of course, I don't mean that the schools that debated before are not good, but at least this is what we call the high school crossfire. Thank you. These are the marks. Style, I give both of you 16. I liked your style. Thank you. Content, I give them 28. I give you 26. They had very good content. From speaker one, they had very good content that was able to support their case. Yes, you also had good content, but they had better content that supported their case. Strategy, I give them 30. I give you 27. Totality, 74. 69. Ladies and gentlemen, it is on these grounds, listen, it is on these grounds that we, as a panel of juries, say it is a unanimous judgment that team affirmative wins. Thank you.